Welcome to True Crime Talks, where we unravel the darkest mysteries and uncover the truth behind the headlines. Today, we dive into the chilling story of Riley Cassian, a newlywed cheerleader, whose honeymoon ended in unspeakable tragedy. Riley Cassian was the kind of person who lit up every room she walked into. A former high school cheerleader with a megawatt smile and an infectious laugh, she had a way of making everyone around her feel special. Her life seemed like a fairy tale, especially when she married her college sweetheart, Lucas, in a stunning beach ceremony that looked like it was plucked straight out of a magazine. The photos from that day were breathtaking. Riley in a flowing white gown, her golden hair catching the sunlight, and Lucas, tall and handsome, gazing at her like she was the only person in the world. Friends and family often referred to them as the golden couple, the kind of pair that made you believe in true love. Riley was bubbly, kind, and full of life, while Lucas was charming, ambitious, and seemingly devoted to her. Their social media feeds were a curated gallery of their love story, filled with romantic dates, adventurous trips, and heartfelt captions that made their followers swoon. When the couple announced their honeymoon destination, a luxurious, adults-only resort on a remote tropical island, it seemed like the perfect way to start their life together. The resort was the epitome of paradise, with private villas nestled in lush greenery, pristine beaches, and crystal-clear waters. Riley couldn't stop talking about it in the weeks leading up to the trip. She posted countdowns on her Instagram stories, sharing her excitement with friends and followers. The day they arrived, Riley uploaded a photo of the two of them standing in front of their villa, arms wrapped around each other with the caption, "Forever starts here." It was a moment that seemed to capture the essence of their love, pure, joyful, and full of promise. But beneath the surface of this idyllic scene, there were subtle cracks that few noticed. Staff at the resort observed that Lucas seemed tense, even irritable during their first day. He snapped at Riley over small things, like her taking too long to get ready, or her chatting with other guests at the pool. Riley, ever the optimist, brushed it off, laughing it away as wedding stress or jet lag. She was used to Lucas's occasional mood swings and had learned to navigate them with patience and understanding. Her friends had warned her about his temper in the past, but Riley always defended him, insisting that he was just passionate and that their love was strong enough to overcome any challenges. That first evening, the couple enjoyed a romantic dinner on the beach, complete with candlelight and a private serenade from a local musician. Riley posted a video of the moment, her face glowing with happiness. But as the night wore on, things took a darker turn. Witnesses later recalled hearing raised voices coming from their villa, though no one thought much of it at the time. Arguments between couples weren't uncommon, especially in the high-pressure environment of a honeymoon. The next morning, the resort staff grew concerned when Riley and Lucas failed to show up for their scheduled breakfast. When a maid entered the villa to check on them, she made a horrifying discovery. Riley's lifeless body lay on the bedroom floor, her face and body showing signs of a brutal beating. The room was in chaos, furniture overturned, broken glass scattered across the floor, and blood spattered on the walls. Lucas was sitting on the porch, his clothes stained with blood, staring blankly into the distance. When questioned, he claimed he had woken up to find Riley dead, and insisted he had no idea what had happened. The news of Riley's death sent shockwaves through the resort and beyond. How could something so tragic happen to a couple who seemed so perfect? As investigators began to piece together the events of that night, they uncovered a story far more complicated and far darker than anyone could have imagined. The golden couple's fairy tale had turned into a nightmare, and the truth behind Riley's death would reveal secrets that no one saw coming. The discovery of Riley Cassian's body sent shockwaves through the tranquil resort, shattering the illusion of paradise. Local police arrived swiftly, their presence a stark contrast to the serene surroundings. The scene inside the villa was one of chaos, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and blood spatter staining the walls. Riley's body lay on the bedroom floor, her injuries indicating a violent and sustained attack. Lucas, her new husband, was found sitting on the villa's porch, his clothes smeared with blood. His demeanor was eerily calm, almost detached, as he recounted his version of events to the officers. He claimed he had woken up to find Riley dead and insisted he had no knowledge of what had happened. From the outset, investigators found Lucas's story difficult to believe. His clothes were heavily stained with blood, yet he claimed he had been asleep in the living room when the attack occurred. The blood spatter patterns in the bedroom suggested a violent struggle, and the positioning of Riley's body indicated she had been attacked while trying to defend herself. Security footage from the resort added another layer of suspicion. It showed Lucas leaving the villa late at night, just hours before Riley's body was discovered. He returned about an hour later, looking disheveled and agitated. When confronted with the footage, Lucas denied ever leaving the villa, further deepening the investigators' doubts. As the police dug deeper into the couple's background, a darker picture of Lucas began to emerge. Interviews with friends and family revealed that Lucas had a history of controlling behavior and explosive temper tantrums. Riley's closest friends shared that she had confided in them about his jealousy and possessiveness, particularly when other men paid attention to her. She had brushed off their concerns, believing that marriage would mellow him out, and that their love was strong enough to overcome his flaws. One friend recalled a particularly troubling incident where Lucas had become enraged after seeing Riley laugh at a joke made by a male coworker. He had accused her of flirting and had given her the silent treatment for days. The investigation also uncovered troubling details about Lucas's past. A former girlfriend came forward revealing that Lucas had been physically abusive during their relationship. She described him as charming and attentive at first, but his behavior had gradually become more controlling and violent. She had eventually left him after he shoved her during an argument, leaving her with a bruised arm. Her testimony painted a stark contrast to the image of the doting husband Lucas presented to the world. Meanwhile, forensic evidence began to tell its own story. The blood on Lucas's clothes was analyzed, and while most of it matched Riley's, there were traces of another person's DNA mixed in. This discovery raised new questions. Who else had been in the villa that night, and what role had they played in Riley's death? Investigators expanded their search, scouring the resort grounds for any clues. Their efforts paid off when they found a bloodied shirt hidden in a dumpster near the villa. The DNA on the shirt matched a local man named Samuel, who worked as a handyman at the resort. When questioned, Samuel admitted to being at the villa that night, but claimed he had been hired by Lucas to scare Riley. According to Samuel, Lucas had become enraged after seeing Riley flirt with another guest at the resort's bar earlier that evening. He wanted to teach her a lesson and had paid Samuel to intimidate her. Samuel insisted he never intended to harm Riley, let alone kill her. He described how Lucas had flown into a rage during the confrontation, attacking Riley himself when she fought back. Samuel claimed he had tried to stop Lucas, but had fled in panic when he realized the situation was spiraling out of control. This shocking revelation turned the case on its head. What had initially seemed like a straightforward case of domestic violence now appeared to be a premeditated act with multiple players involved. The investigators faced a new challenge, untangling the web of lies and half-truths to uncover the full truth behind Riley's death. As they pieced together the evidence, one thing became clear. The golden couple's fairy tale had been a carefully constructed facade, hiding a reality far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The discovery of Samuel's involvement added a shocking twist to the investigation, turning what had seemed like a straightforward case into a complex web of lies and manipulation. Samuel described how he had reluctantly agreed, believing it would be a simple scare tactic. He claimed he had entered the villa late at night, as instructed by Lucas, and had confronted Riley in the bedroom. But things quickly spiraled out of control. Riley, terrified and confused, had fought back, screaming for help. Samuel insisted he had never intended to hurt her, but Lucas, who had been watching from the sidelines, suddenly snapped. In a fit of rage, Lucas had grabbed a nearby object, a heavy lamp according to Samuel, and began attacking Riley. Samuel claimed he had tried to intervene, but Lucas's fury was uncontrollable. Overwhelmed by the violence, Samuel had fled the villa, leaving behind the bloodied shirt that would later become a key piece of evidence. Forensic analysis supported parts of Samuel's story. The blood on the shirt found in the dumpster matched both Riley's DNA and Samuel's, confirming his presence at the scene. The broken lamp in the bedroom, covered in blood and fingerprints, was identified as the likely murder weapon. Lucas's fingerprints were found on the lamp, further implicating him in the attack. However, investigators still faced the challenge of determining the extent of Samuel's involvement. Was he merely a pawn in Lucas's plan, or had he played a more active role in Riley's death? As the investigation continued, more details about Lucas's behavior in the days leading up to the murder came to light. Staff at the resort recalled seeing him pacing nervously, often on his phone, and snapping at Riley over minor issues. One employee remembered overhearing a heated argument between the couple the night before the murder, though they had dismissed it as typical newlywed tension. Riley's phone, recovered from the villa, revealed a series of text messages that painted a troubling picture of their relationship. In the weeks before the wedding, Lucas had sent increasingly controlling and accusatory messages, questioning Riley's loyalty and demanding to know where she was at all times. Riley's responses were patient but tinged with frustration as she tried to reassure him while maintaining her independence. The most damning evidence against Lucas, however, came from his own financial records. Investigators discovered that he had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Riley just months before their wedding. The policy named him as the sole beneficiary, raising suspicions that Riley's death had been premeditated for financial gain. This revelation added a chilling layer of calculation to the case, suggesting that Lucas's jealousy and rage may have been part of a larger, more sinister plan. Samuel, meanwhile, struck a deal with prosecutors in exchange for his testimony. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter, admitting his role in the events that led to Riley's death, but maintaining that he had never intended for her to be harmed. His cooperation provided crucial insights into Lucas's mindset and actions, helping to build a stronger case against him. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, the investigators were left with a haunting question. How had Riley, a vibrant and beloved young woman, ended up in such a tragic situation? The answer lay in the dark undercurrents of her relationship with Lucas, a relationship that had seemed perfect on the surface, but was riddled with control, jealousy, and violence. The case was no longer just about solving a murder. It was about uncovering the truth behind the facade of a fairy tale romance and holding those responsible accountable for their actions. The revelations sent shockwaves through Riley's community, leaving her friends and family grappling with grief and anger. They had trusted Lucas, believing he was the man who would make Riley happy. Now they were forced to confront the painful reality that the person they thought they knew was capable of such unimaginable cruelty. As the investigation moved toward trial, the world watched, waiting for justice to be served for Riley Cassian, the cheerful, bright-eyed newlywed whose life had been tragically cut short. The trial of Lucas Cassian became a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. The courtroom was packed every day with reporters, curious onlookers, and Riley's grieving family and friends filling the seats. The case had all the elements of a gripping true crime story: a beautiful young victim, a seemingly perfect marriage, and a husband with a dark side. As the proceedings began, the prosecution laid out their case with meticulous precision, painting Lucas as a manipulative and jealous man who had orchestrated Riley's murder. The prosecution's opening statement was chilling. They described how Lucas's controlling behavior had escalated in the months leading up to the wedding, culminating in the violent attack that ended Riley's life. They presented evidence of the life insurance policy Lucas had taken out on Riley, emphasizing the financial motive behind the crime. The broken lamp, covered in blood and fingerprints, was displayed as the murder weapon, and forensic experts testified that the blood spatter patterns in the villa were consistent with a brutal, sustained attack. Samuel, the resort handyman, was a key witness for the prosecution. He took the stand and recounted the events of that fateful night in harrowing detail. He described how Lucas had hired him to intimidate Riley, how the situation had spiraled out of control, and how Lucas had ultimately been the one to deliver the fatal blows. Samuel's testimony was corroborated by the bloodied shirt found in the dumpster, as well as security footage showing him entering and leaving the villa around the time of the murder. The defense, however, fought back fiercely. They argued that Samuel was the real killer, pointing to his criminal record and his admission of being at the scene. They painted him as a desperate man who would say anything to avoid a life sentence, suggesting that he had acted alone and that Lucas was an innocent bystander caught up in a tragic situation. Lucas himself took the stand, maintaining his innocence and tearfully describing his love for Riley. He claimed that Samuel had attacked Riley without his knowledge, and that he had been too shocked and terrified to intervene. But the prosecution was ready to dismantle Lucas's story. They presented text messages between Lucas and Riley, revealing his controlling and jealous behavior. Friends and family members testified about his temper and his history of volatile relationships. The former girlfriend who had come forward earlier in the investigation took the stand, recounting her own experiences of abuse at Lucas's hands. Her testimony was particularly damning, as it showed a pattern of behavior that contradicted Lucas's image as a devoted husband. Perhaps the most emotional moment of the trial came when Riley's parents took the stand. Her mother, fighting back tears, described Riley as a kind, vibrant young woman who had been full of life and dreams. She spoke of the pain of losing her daughter and the betrayal they felt upon learning the truth about Lucas. Her testimony left few dry eyes in the courtroom and underscored the human cost of the crime. As the trial progressed, the evidence against Lucas became overwhelming. The jury was presented with a mountain of forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and financial records that all pointed to his guilt. The defense's attempts to shift the blame onto Samuel fell flat, as the prosecution effectively demonstrated that Lucas had been the driving force behind the attack. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Lucas was found guilty of second-degree murder, while Samuel was convicted of manslaughter. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions: relief from Riley's family and friends, anger from Lucas's supporters, and a sense of closure for those who had followed the case. The judge sentenced Lucas to 25 years in prison, a decision that was met with both satisfaction and sorrow. For Riley's loved ones, it was a measure of justice, but it could never bring her back. The trial had exposed the dark underbelly of a relationship that had seemed perfect on the surface, leaving everyone to grapple with the painful reality of what had happened. As Lucas was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom emptied, but the impact of the case would linger for years to come. In the aftermath of the trial, the story of Riley Cassian's murder continued to resonate, leaving a lasting impact on everyone who had followed the case. For Riley's family and friends, the verdict brought a measure of closure, but it could never fully heal the wound left by her loss. They had lost a daughter, a sister, and a friend, a vibrant young woman whose life had been cut short in the most tragic way. In the months following the trial, Riley's parents channeled their grief into action, establishing a foundation in her name to support victims of domestic violence. The foundation aimed to raise awareness about the warning signs of abusive relationships and provide resources for those seeking help. It became a beacon of hope, turning Riley's tragedy into a force for good. The resort where the murder took place struggled to recover from the scandal. Once a sought-after destination for honeymooners, it now carried a dark reputation. Guests reported feeling uneasy staying in the villa where Riley had died, and some even claimed to hear whispers or see fleeting shadows, as if her spirit still lingered. Locals spoke of the tragedy in hushed tones, and the resort's management made efforts to rebrand and distance themselves from the incident. But for many, the memory of what had happened there was too vivid to forget. Lucas, now serving his 25-year sentence, became a symbol of how appearances can deceive. Behind the charming facade of the devoted husband lay a man capable of unimaginable cruelty. In prison, he maintained his innocence, writing letters to supporters and claiming he had been wrongfully convicted, but few were swayed by his protests. The evidence against him had been overwhelming, and his attempts to shift the blame onto Samuel only reinforced the perception of him as manipulative and self-serving. Samuel, meanwhile, served his sentence for manslaughter, a reduced charge in exchange for his cooperation during the trial. He expressed remorse for his role in Riley's death, admitting that he had made a terrible mistake by agreeing to Lucas's plan. While some saw him as a pawn in Lucas's scheme, others believed he bore significant responsibility for the tragedy. His story served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of getting involved in situations fueled by jealousy and rage. Years after the trial, a documentary crew revisited the case, uncovering new details that added another layer of complexity to the story. They interviewed key figures, including investigators, witnesses, and Riley's loved ones, piecing together a comprehensive account of what had happened. One of the most shocking revelations came from a former cellmate of Lucas, who claimed that Lucas had confessed to orchestrating Riley's murder as part of a plan to claim the life insurance money. While this confession couldn't be verified, it aligned with the financial motives that had been uncovered during the trial. The documentary also shed light on Riley's life, celebrating her as more than just a victim. Friends and family shared stories of her kindness, her infectious laugh, and her unwavering optimism. They spoke of her dreams for the future, dreams that had been tragically cut short. The documentary served as a reminder that behind every true crime story is a real person, someone who was loved and whose loss left a void in the lives of those who knew them. For Riley's community, her death became a catalyst for change. Schools and organizations began offering workshops on healthy relationships and the warning signs of abuse, aiming to prevent similar tragedies from happening. Riley's story was shared widely, not to sensationalize her death, but to honor her memory and educate others. Her legacy lived on through the foundation, the awareness campaigns, and the countless lives touched by her story. As time passed, the pain of Riley's loss never fully faded, but her memory became a source of strength and inspiration. Her family found solace in knowing that her death had sparked important conversations and helped others escape dangerous situations. The resort, though forever marked by the tragedy, eventually found a way to move forward, though the villa where Riley died remained closed, a silent tribute to the life that had been lost there. In the end, Riley Cassian's story was one of love, loss, and the enduring fight for justice. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is hope for change and the possibility of creating something meaningful out of unimaginable pain. Her light, though extinguished far too soon, continued to shine through the life she had touched and the legacy she left behind.